Hello, everyone. We'll get started here so we can leave plenty of time for all of your questions that you have, because I'm sure you have plenty. So my name is Neil. I am one of the assistant directors of financial aid here at the University of St. Thomas. I'm joined by my colleague Bill Peterson from our business office. And today we're going to talk about some of those next business steps when it comes to your students' education at St. Thomas. So talking about next steps in financial aid, talking about how to read the bill and how to make payments. So we're going to get going with all of that and the important information that you want to take home with you today. So I'm going to jump right in and talk about proxy access. So what proxy is at St. Thomas is our way of dealing with what are called the federal FERPA laws. The FERPA laws essentially say that your student is an adult once they start classes at St. Thomas in the eyes of the federal government. And because of that, we can't share any information about them with anyone other than them unless they give us specific written authorization to do so. So proxy is our way of doing that. So if you go to stthomas.edu/proxy, that'll give you instructions on how to set that up. But I always say if you're going to do one thing after today, right away, it's going to be setting up proxy, because it's really just going to make it easier for you. Say say in October you want to call up the financial aid office and ask a question about your student's financial aid for whatever reason. If you're not set up as proxy, we're going to say, sorry, we can't talk to you about that. So it saves you a lot of frustration. It makes everything a lot simpler to kind of move forward in these things. And proxy also allows family members to be able to ask questions to the registrar's office, academic counseling, and students get to select specifically what their proxy has access to. So definitely a good idea to do. Later, Bill is going to talk about another system called Authorized User, and he's going to go into details on that. Those are two separate things, so you want to make sure that you're setting up both of those. But again, proxy is really important to do. Filing the FAFSA. So I'm going to guess most of you have already filed the FAFSA for the coming school year. If you haven't, though, there is still time to do so. The FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. You can find it at fafsa.gov. The reason why I encourage doing it if you haven't done so already is at the very, very least, all students qualify for $5,500 of federal loan funds that are in their name only. So if you want that at least as a funding source for the school year, you need to file the FAFSA to do so. The interest rate's 5.5%, and again, only in the student's name. No cosigner is required for this loan. But that federal loan is just the minimum of what a student can qualify for. There are additional potential state and federal grants, grant funding from the university, work study funds. So we don't know what your student would be eligible for unless you complete the FAFSA. So again, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and do that. For those of you who have filed the FAFSA, just as a reminder, you do need to file the FAFSA again every single year if your student wants to continue to receive any need-based financial aid they're receiving again. So the FAFSA this coming year will open up in December. Otherwise, every year after that, it should be October. And so for some of you, maybe your situation has changed since you filed the FAFSA. So if that has happened, so if you've had situations such as job loss, changes in your household, if you've had large out-of-pocket medical expenses, those are all things that, that the financial aid office can take a look at. So again, if your income has changed since 2021, please reach out to us because we can potentially update the FAFSA to reflect those things. So the best way to do so is to reach out to your student's financial aid counselor. If you don't know who that person is, you can just reach out to the financial aid office and we can help you get that process started. So special circumstances is what we call that, and it's a really good idea to make sure that you're reaching out to us because it's the only way for us to know if your family is running into these situations. And this is something that we can look at all 4 years as well, too. So many of you might be wondering, so you received your Students Financial Aid Award, and you're wondering kind of what the next steps are. So any of the scholarships and grants your students receive, those are already pre-accepted. Nothing else needs to be done on those things. But for the federal loans that your student may have been offered, they do need to make a decision on those. I suggest doing that by August at the latest. And the first step would be accepting or declining those federal loans on our Murphy Online system. So they should have an email giving them step-by-step instructions on how to do that. Otherwise, if you go to stthomas.edu/awarded, it also has instructions on how to do that, but it's done on our Murphy Online system, which is an online system that your student's going to get very familiar with. But that's the first step, is making that decision to either borrow those or decline them for the school year. After a student accepts the loans, they need to complete the federal entrance counseling and then the master promissory note. Both of those are located at studentaid.gov, which is the same website where the FAFSA is located. And your student's going to log in with their username and password for the FAFSA as well, too. Their username and password, not the parent one. Not that any of you would ever do a step like that for your students and accidentally do your own username and password. But if it happens, it does need to be in the student's username and password. So you also might be wondering, outside of those federal loans that your students were offered, again, with that $5,500 amount, what other financing options are available? One of those would be the Federal Parent Plus loan. So the Parent Plus loan is a loan that parents can borrow to help cover remaining costs that the loan is in the parent's name. It doesn't transfer over to the student, but it can be a really good funding option for some families. The interest rate is a little bit higher than the student version. It's a little over 8%. It does have a higher fee as well, too, a 4.236% origination fee. But some of the benefits of the Parent Plus loan is it can be processed really quickly. So say, for example, your student signs up for a J-term class kind of last minute. You weren't aware that was going to happen. We can process a Plus loan really quickly to help get funding in for that. So that's what some families will use it for, but it can be a really good option. You can apply right at studentaid.gov. Again, same website where the FAFSA is located. This one, you do log in with the parent username and password. Payment can either begin right away while the student's in school or defer until 6 months after graduation. The other option that families will normally look at would be a private education loan. So private education loans are a loan that would be in the student's name first, but it will require a cosigner to be approved. So typically a parent, but it can also be another family member, family friend. Interest rates will vary based off of the credit history of the cosigner in most cases. And then repayment generally doesn't start until after graduation. So if you go to stthomas.edu/other loans, you can find a list of lenders that our students borrow through the most. You're not required to use a lender on that list, but it can be a really good place to start. And the last thing I'm going to talk about before I hand it over to Bill is student employment. So one thing that makes St. Thomas a little unique is that we do allow all students to work on campus. So whether your student was awarded state or federal work study as part of their financial aid award or not, all students can work on campus. Typically, students can earn about $4,000 in the school year if they're working about 10 to 12 hours a week. We estimate that based off of all of our jobs will pay at least $15 an hour. So some do pay more than that. Most of them pay $15 an hour. We don't guarantee employment, so students do have to seek out their own employment on campus, but they can do so by going to stthomas.edu/jobs. That is a ongoing job listing, so as new job openings come up, they get posted there, but students can start applying even as early as right now for jobs that start in the fall. I normally suggest late July, early August is a really good time to start applying for those. But students get a choice over how they receive their funds, so they're paid every 2 weeks either way, but students can have that go towards their remaining costs, or they can have that go to their own bank account and use that for their own personal expenses. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Bill, who's going to talk about student accounts.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name's Bill Peterson. I'm with the business office. I'm going to briefly go over how we do the billing here at St. Thomas, talk a little bit about our payment plan, setting up authorized users, and just a few other odds and ends. Now, first and foremost, how we communicate the bill. It's done electronically, so it's sent as a UST or a e-bill notification to the student's UST email address right around the 25th of each month. So right around August 25th, that first bill will be generated, and it'll be sent as a UST e-bill notification again to the student's email address. Now, we do understand that parents generally take a high responsibility and help finance costs. So it is important that your son or daughter do set you as an authorized user on the billing site. It's a very simple process that they'll do that. It will give you access. You'll be able to view the bill, make payments. Now, I know we talked briefly about proxy, which is more view-only information university-wide, whether that's for financial aid information, registration status, billing information, et cetera. So that's kind of more university-wide view-only, where authorized user is actually access to the billing site, which is a separate site. Now, how they're going to do that, they're going to log in through Murphy Online, which is, you see there up at the top of the screen in pink, that pink box up there, it says Murphy Online. Now, that's their main portal as a student. They'll be very familiar with that portal. They go in there to register for classes, view financial aid information. They'll be able to view the e-bill and e-pay system through this site. So it's very simple. I also highlight too on this screen and onestthomas.edu. And that same screen, just under My Actions, it says tuition or tuition balance. They can click there as well, and it would take them directly through. So there's kind of the two steps there, or the two areas that I talk about. Through Murphy Online, we've had issues where the pop-up blocker might come up and prevent them from getting directly through. So the one St. Thomas area under My Actions tends to streamline that, but they can go through either way. So those are the two ways they do that. So when they log into the billing site, it's called the e-bill and e-pay system. It's going to look very much like this. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see Authorized User. They'll click and add an email address and click Submit. It's a very simple process. You'll know once you're set as an authorized user because you'll receive an you'll receive an email just saying you're now set as an authorized user with a temporary password and a link to log in. So going forward, you'd get the e-bill notifications each month, just like your son or daughter does. And so then you don't have to worry about trying to wait for that communication back and forth of when the bill is ready and so forth. Now, I know in the past we've had some families just think, well, I'll log in under my son or daughter's access. We can't really do that any longer, obviously for privacy reasons. However, there's also now, just like anywhere else, multi-factor identification. So logging in, it's going to prompt you with a code that you're going to have to submit, and your son or daughter would be getting that probably while they're in classes and not understand, what's that for. So just make sure they set you as an authorized user. It's probably easiest to do once we get closer to August to do that. So it's all set and ready to go. Another just kind of highlight there, right in the middle of the screen where it says View Statement. You can click there, and that would show you the statement. Which I'll have one that shows it very much. I'll have one to show you here real quick. And then under My Account as well, right under there it will say Statement. And then you can view the statement and previous month's statements if you need to. Now, students are automatically enrolled into a semester-long payment plan. For fall semester, that's September through December. For spring term, that is February through May. Due dates are always the 19th of each month. Now, do families need to follow this verbatim? Not necessarily. I mean, if you have the ability to pay it in full by that first due date and would rather do that, by all means, you can do that. Some families might have a 529 plan and plan to utilize that. Or maybe you have loans in place and it's enough to take care of that balance. By all means, that's fine. Now, we do have families that like to spread that out over the course of the term. If you choose to do that, there is a finance charge assessed monthly of 1.1%. Now, this is not a late charge for that matter. It's basically the cost for extending the credit as we're allowing you to pay that over a 4-month time frame. So just keep that in mind. Otherwise, I mean, if you wanted to just pay maybe half in September and the rest in October, you could do that as well. You don't have to follow it exactly, however you want to pay, but that semester is a guideline on what you'd like to do there. And then obviously for J term, that's their winter term, completely optional for them. If they want to register for a class, then that's billed out at the end of December and due in full on January 19th. And like I mentioned earlier, if you click on View Statement, it's going to look very much like this. Right in the middle, you have all tuition fees, room and board billed out or broken down for you. And right below that, that's current payments. Now, that's any UST award, scholarship, any grants they may receive should already be dispersed to the account by that time that bill is generated and reflected on here. Now, what you're not going to see is any loan. So any federal subsidized or unsubsidized loan, if you have a parent loan or a private loan, any of those would show as pending financial aid. And the reason for that is we wait until students are actually starting class. So usually that first week of class, those loans would disperse. And obviously this bill is generated prior to that. So just keep that in mind. It should show as pending. If you do not see that, by all means, that's fine. I would just suggest calling financial aid just to make sure that you have everything lined up prior to the due date of September 19th. An example would be is if they hadn't accepted their federal loans as a part of the FAFSA. If they hadn't accepted that yet, then it wouldn't show it as pending because there's outstanding requirements still needed to be done. So that's just an example if you didn't see that. If there's ever a credit balance on the account in which we'd owe money back to you, or for the student for that matter, we do encourage that students set up an e-refund profile. It's the quickest, most efficient way of getting funds back to you. How that could happen is maybe with a 529 plan, you paid the balance in full in early September prior to the loans being dispersed. And then when the loans dispersed maybe a week later, that created a credit balance on the account. So this is the quickest, most efficient way we can get the funds back to you. We do that 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And students are the only ones that have the ability to pay it or set this up through their student portal. Now, as an authorized user, you'd log in, you would not see that option to do that. But obviously, if you're making the payments and you want the money coming back to you, just work with your son or daughter in which account you'd like set up. Now, in some cases, Parent Plus loan generates a refund, then a paper check is cut to the borrower for that loan. Now, we still do paper checks. However, we only do that once a week on Wednesdays, so by the time it's being mailed out, it's Thursday afternoon or Friday morning at the very latest. So, like I said, this is just the quickest way to get funds back to you. And we could hold on to it until next semester if you'd like. There's just a keep credit authorization form on the business office website that you'd have to submit if you'd like to hold on to it. I'll get to you in a second. I just have another slide or two and I'll be with you, okay? Now, due date's on September 19th. If you happen to miss a payment and we generate the bill a couple days after that, it would put the account in a past due status. And when that happens, it puts a hold on the registration or viewing or accessing their official transcripts. If it's a matter of just missing the payment, you can easily make a payment online. Our system updates nightly, so the holds are removed. However, if you do run into any issues, any financial shortfall, whatever it may be, please reach out to us in the business office or at least financial aid office, and we can see if there's any additional funding to help you out with that or try to work with you the best we can. The earlier you can reach out, the better. That gives us a little bit more time to work with. So just keep that in mind. If you run into any issues, we are here to help you out as best we can. Now, last thing I want to just cover is that St. Thomas has a tuition refund program. Now, this is an event of any medical withdrawal only that is administered with GradGuard Protection Plan. Now, this is something you do work directly with GradGuard to set up. On average, the cost is $110 because they see many families use $10,000 as uncovered costs. And so that's $110, but you can set that up with them however you'd like. It is completely optional, again, but given the cost of higher education, this is a nice umbrella to have just in case something were to happen. In an event of an illness, injury, mental health issues, I believe even COVID-related issues are still covered under this. So, like I said, it's completely optional. You have all the way up through the first 2 weeks of class to sign up for that if you'd like to. Otherwise, after that 10th day of class in this semester, they're locked into their class schedule. So from there, then you wouldn't be able to do that. So just keep that in mind. Like I said, it's just a nice umbrella to have in case something were to happen, especially 2 to 3 months into the semester. And I just wanted to just say one last thing. I know this is a lot of information you're going to be getting here today. You're here all day, and thank you for coming. But through our St. Thomas business office website, actually it's kind of covered there, but stthomas.edu/business office. Right on that first screen, you'll see something that says Handy Guide or a link that says Handy Guide. That will take you to our Taking Care of Business PDF that's about 10 pages long, and it goes over everything I talked about today. So if you had wondering about the payment plans or setting up authorized users, etc. So it kind of goes over everything there. Beyond that, though, any other questions you may have for either one of us? Ma'am, sorry about that. Yeah, so the question was in regards to the Merit Scholarship. So as Neil stated, those are awards that are automatically accepted. So those are going to be dispersed on that student account, and it would reflect on that actual statement. Merit Award or scholarship, UST scholarship. And, we bill on a per term basis. So they're only going to be registered for fall term. And then spring, they would register in late November, early December for that. So financial aid awards are split half and half. So you'd see that first half and then the rest in late January, early February. That help? Sure, sir.
Do we have access online to the 1098-T tax forms during the tax season for tuition paid, or is that something that's mailed directly to us?
Yeah, so the question in regards to 1098Ts, yes, that would be available through Murphy Online for the students, and it is also mailed out as well. Mm-hmm. Sir?
My former students, we had $529. We sent the check directly from the management company to the school. I just saw electronic options. Is that still an option to have that check mailed directly to the school and brought to your office?
Yeah, so good question in regards to 529s. I'll just say, with 529 plans, it really comes down to the provider and how that works. But in most situations, you have the option of mailing it directly to the school or sending directly to the school or, depositing it into your own account, and then you can turn around and pay it. Now, most of them send checks to the bursar's office or our business office. Now, I know some of them are starting to do electronic options, but that's, with the provider, you'd have to check and see if they have that. Ma'am, back there?
So financial aid, I understand why I would call that, but what are the things that we might be needing to go to the business office for? Just want to differentiate the two different things that we might need to access from these offices.
Sure. So with financial aid in the business office, I would just say, with financial aid, if you have any loan questions, wanted to discuss more about their financial aid award, or if there's any additional assistance, like I said, if there was, where you had a special circumstance or funding issues, that's something you'd reach out to the financial aid. They could even kind of go over estimated costs with you, once the financial aid is awarded. Now, with the business office, that's all billing. So when it comes to if you have questions about the semester-long payment plan or setting up a special arrangement along those lines, paying the bill, etc. Does that help? Sure. Ma'am? Oh, I'm sorry. Back there.
Yeah, so the question is about any local scholarships or other what we call outside scholarships. So if students receive an outside scholarship, generally, if it comes directly to you, you just have to forward that on to the financial aid office. So whether you want to do that via mail or if you want to bring it in person, even that first week of classes or that move-in time, you can bring it to the financial aid office. If the check is made out to just St. Thomas, that's great. We just ask that you write the student's ID number on that check. So we make sure that we get it to the right John Smith. But if it's made out to both the student and St. Thomas, we'll need the student to sign that check as well, too. If we get any directly from the provider and it's made out to both the student and the university, we have an automatic email that we send out to them and ask them to come down to the financial aid office to sign that. So to sum that up, if you get the scholarship check, you have to bring it to the financial aid office, and then we'll get it applied to their account. It all goes towards fall semester unless either the provider or the student asks us to split it between semesters. So.
Going back to the paying in full in August, in lieu of that, if we paid on a monthly basis, we talked about there being a 1.5% fee. Is that on a per month basis or is that annualized? So on an annualized basis, that's 18%.
So yeah, the finance charge, yes, it's actually 1.1%. Yes, that is monthly. So as you pay, it would go down if you're spreading it out over the course of the term. Yes, over the year, it's 13.2% if you're thinking about that. Yep. So.
Just trying to weigh the.
Yeah.
You're better off leaving it in your 529 and accruing.
Yeah, and I guess, it depends on all families, what works best for you. But, paying it over the course of the term, if you have the ability to pay it in full or, utilizing a 529, it's probably the best option for you. Ma'am?
The $5,500 federal loans, you suggested doing that in August or early August. So what if the student's not sure they're going to need the full amount? Can they access some of that the second semester?
Yeah, so the question is about the federal loans at $5,500 that's available to students who complete the FAFSA. So if a student doesn't want to borrow the full amount, on Murphy Online, there's an option to modify it. So say the student just wants to borrow $2,000 for the year, they can enter in $2,000 and we'll update it to just that. They can also just reach out to their financial aid counselor or the financial aid office and say, I would like to borrow $2,000 for the school year, and we'll update that. As far as if a student doesn't want to use it for fall semester, they can also reach out to the financial aid office and ask to move that towards spring. And if they have a specific amount, again, say $2,000 for spring only, they can just reach out and ask to do that. If a student doesn't borrow their federal loan for freshman year at all, that's just fine. They're still eligible for sophomore year on. They just have to file the FAFSA again, but they can't double dip, so they don't get the $5,500 for freshman year and get to add that on top of the sophomore year amount. It's kind of a use it or lose it as far as that freshman year amount is concerned, but it doesn't completely end their eligibility. Does that answer your question? Great. Did you still have a question, sir?
I think it was answered by this gentleman over here by
Great.
saying, if we don't pay right away, we're gonna pay 13% monthly.
Yeah, if you choose to do the monthly payment plan.
1% monthly.
Over the year, yeah.
So basically, pay out or pay interest.
More or less, yeah. Did you have a question? Yeah. Yes, that's right. So the way that the monthly payments work, sorry to step on your toes, Bill, I just have the mic still. So the way the monthly payments work is that the first payment starts in September, so September 19th, and then that runs through December for fall semester. And then for spring semester, it's February through May. If a student does register for a January term class, a J-term class, there is a separate billing statement for just January as well, too. So, but if a student's not registered for January, there's no payments in between. Yeah. Yeah, so for most students, their charges are pretty much identical for fall semester and spring semester. There are things like course fees or their book costs might be different, things along those lines. But more or less, as far as tuition fees, residence hall meal plan, their charges should be pretty much the same for fall and spring semester, and their financial aid too. So any of their scholarships, grants, loans, those get equally split between fall and spring semester. J-term is optional, so students are never required to take a J-term class, but depending on their major, depending on just their own path to getting their degree, they might decide to take a J-term class. But yeah, J-term is always optional.
I would just suggest on J-term, if your son or daughter decides to take one, just make sure they're communicating with you if they intend to register for a J-term class. Sometimes that's not communicated, and then that can be an obviously added cost that you had not expected because you had financial aid and everything lined up for the year, and you're like, great, we're set. And then sometimes you find out come spring term or beginning of spring, like, what's this added cost? So I would just suggest that come that time frame, just make sure they're communicating with you if they're taking a class, because it's completely optional. In summer term, there is a summer term as well. That's 3 months, June through August, completely optional as well. And that's half price during that time. So, but.
Any last questions before lunch? I think this group is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for coming today.
Yeah, thanks for coming.